In this video, I'm going to try and give you at least two different ways you can use to fix a stair tread that has slipped out of the dado or the slot in the stringer. Now, the first method I'm suggesting to use would be to use some type of a bracket and some screws, and then move the bracket back. The bracket is going to need to be moved back, remember, because the slot, the dado or the tread needs to slide back into the slot. If you have it at the edge, if you have the bracket at the edge, you're not going to be able to pull it you're not going to be able to slide the tread into the slot. Now, I would like to point out one more thing. There's a good chance that you are going to have some nails or screws in the slot. If you can't remove them, at all, then you might need to actually just install a bracket. I'm suggesting this if you cannot move the tread. If you can't use this method or the second method I'm going to show you, then you might actually need to just install some type of a metal bracket here or rebuild the stairway. So, because it's not uncommon to have nails or screws where someone has either nailed the tread from this side or nailed it from this side. And if the stairway has pulled apart, the tread has separated from the stringer, you might be able to slide it back in with the nails or screws in place, or at least slide it enough to where you can use some brackets here to make the treads a little safer to walk on, to where you wouldn't have to worry about it again. So this is one method here. If you need to use a little more force, then I would suggest using multiple brackets. Might need to even put more of the brackets on other steps, because sometimes it's going to take a lot more force to put this thing back together than it did to have it come apart. So you could install more brackets up as needed. Now, one thing I would like to suggest would be to install a bracket on the other side. This might require a bracket on each tread or multiple brackets on the treads. The reason for this is, and this might be something that you're really not thinking about, is that you could actually set this up on this side and start to pull the treads, but the stringer is not going to move as much, and you'll actually pull the tread out of the other side. You'll pull it out of the slot on the other side. So before you do something like this, make sure that you firmly attach the treads on the other side, or at least monitor them as you're screwing or putting force on this. At least monitor them to make sure that you're not pulling them out. And that could be done by simply putting a pencil mark on the tread right up against the stringer. And as you're tightening this, make sure that you're actually pulling it together instead of pulling it out. So I'm sure that's not that hard to understand. If it was me making this type of a repair, I would just go ahead and put the brackets on the other side and then monitor the brackets to make sure that I wasn't bending anything or putting pressure on it to where the brackets would be loosening up or separating somehow from the stringer and the tread, creating the same problem. What we're looking at here is a heavy-duty stair angle bracket, and I believe you can find these. They are called stair angles. You can find them in your search engines, or most home improvement centers, again, carry these. Now, this would be the preferred method of use, and the reason why I'm suggesting this, and this is only if you need to apply more pressure. If the other method I showed earlier using the A35s works, then you're going to be fine. Use those and put it back together. And make sure that you leave the A35s on after you've tightened everything up. There's no need to take these things off. And the same thing would be with the brackets, because it's going to help hold everything together. Now, here's a bracket here. And this is how it would look underneath the stair step. Now, with these, you're going to actually be able to use lag screws and a ratchet, a socket and a ratchet. I don't recommend using an impact wrench for something like this. And I don't have a picture, but I would like to see if I could explain this to you. Now, you could use the same method as I previously mentioned. Get the heavy-duty stair angle bracket, set it back, move it back away from the edge of the tread, about an inch, let's say, so that you'll be able to pull it into the slot. And you might need to put another angle bracket on the next tread up, or the next 2 or 3 treads, depending upon the type of damage you're dealing with. And then firmly attach the bracket to the bottom of the tread. And then, of course, it's going to be at least a ½ inch to an inch away from the stringer you're going to use to pull it back together. Then you could use lag screws. And you might think about pre-drilling holes into the stair stringer. Obviously the holes are going to need to be a little smaller than the lag bolts. And then using a ratchet, this way you're going to be able to slowly pull the stairway back together. And what I would suggest doing would be to tighten this one a little bit, and then move to this one, tighten it a little bit, tighten this one a little bit, and see if you're actually pulling the stairway together. But I don't recommend just tightening this one all the way. Make sure that, and then not doing anything here. Make sure that you tighten them gradually while you are looking at the slot, the stringer, and the stair tread to make sure that you're actually pulling it together. I mean, it's not going to be, there are going to be times where you're not going to be able to make this type of repair. You're not going to be able to pull it back together. The stairway will need to be rebuilt, or you will need to install brackets like these. You will need to install a bracket like this underneath your stair step. And depending upon the thickness of the tread, you might actually need to run bolts and use a carriage bolt to where you have the rounded part on the top, run it through here and put a bolt or lag screws, depending on the thickness of the stair tread. So if you cannot pull it back together, you can always use a bracket like this. That's what these brackets are designed for. To provide you with additional support, depending upon how far of a gap you have. If you have a gap where the tread is a ½ inch away from the stair stringer, this might not work. The stairway might need to be rebuilt if that's the case. But if you have a tread where it's just pulled out of the dado, and it's right at the edge here and you can't get it back together, something like this would work just fine. Simply just bolt it back together and you should have a safe set of stairs. So anyway, I hope that helps. And I think I am going to make a few more videos on some of the problems you have with basement stairs. At least I'm going to make one more on showing you how to attach the bottom stringers to the concrete.